You're tuned into RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
4 seconds left. In front. Happy moment. The Tampa Bay Lightning have won the first Stanley Cup. And the Tampa Bay Lightning have won the Stanley Cup. Lightning strikes twice. The Tampa Bay Lightning win their second straight Stanley Cup.
Welcome to RBLR Lightning. Better yet, welcome back to RBLR Lightning. I'll be your interim host today, Matt Gannon. Alongside me is Joe Zemataro. We're playing shorthanded today. Jake is on the injured list. He will not be with us for the show, so me and Joe are doing a kids' table episode. We're going to try not to burn down the place in the process. So, Joe, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing pretty well. It's been a busy week, but I tell you what, as soon as that intro music hits, it just kind of gets the blood going, and I'm ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a rough patch of hockey. Yeah, we're on a 4-game losing skid, but again, like I always say, that this is therapy to me. So, you guys lift my spirits up a little bit. I need it a little bit more this week, more than other weeks, especially. So hopefully you can ease my spirits just a little bit, but I guess we can just hop right into things. We'll start with the roster news and notes and injuries. Thankfully, no injuries as far as I'm concerned. We're still doing the rotating lineup, getting guys in, sitting a couple of the bottom line players just to get everybody some playing time. But we did make an internal roster move. We now have a video lady, if you will. Her name is Alexa. She's going to be doing some TikToks, some really good game coverage and content after the games. She'll be everywhere where we post all this stuff, like RBLR Lightning on Twitter. We have a TikTok now. You should go check that out, and every other social media platform as well. Also, be sure to find us on Spotify, on Apple Music, everywhere you can get your podcasts. Like and subscribe. Leave us a review as well. It really helps us out. Truly, it does. Helps us.
If you're not watching us on YouTube yet, what are you doing? Come on, jump on YouTube, get the video version of our podcast, and join in some of the fun.
You can see our beautiful faces all the time on YouTube. Thank you for plugging that one, Joe.
Yeah, I'd say as I look my roughest, not even close to being trimmed up this week. Yeah, let's go full video, baby.
You're just getting your playoff beard started. You're getting that grizzled look
going
to
early.
Yep. You got to get a head start on that. So, unfortunately, we can't look too far ahead in the playoff picture. We have yet to clinch a spot so far, but the horizon's right there. We can see it coming close enough, but unfortunately, the Bolts on a 4-game losing skid this week. We've got nothing really good to talk about, I'll say. Starting off the week with a bit of a sour, rough loss to Montreal. It was a bit of a close game. I don't think the Bolts really showed out as much as they really should have. They looked better in their previous game against Montreal the week before. I get it. They're tired. They're playing away. Their away record isn't the greatest, but this one was a tough one to swallow for me, Joe. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this one because I've got some strong opinions.
You'd almost accuse me of being a Lightning apologist in a certain sense. At least for these games, the way that I'm looking at them, there definitely is a lot of bad, right? Especially when it comes to just not closing out games and winning. But at the same rate, there's some good that you can take away as well. And the first period of this game was not played well by the Lightning at all. But I felt like the next 40 minutes, the last two periods, they actually did play pretty decently and came against a pretty hot goalie in Montebo, and he played very well in net for Montreal and made it tough for the Lightning to be able to come back in this one, even though they had a couple of goals in the second and then one pretty late in the third. The momentum was there for a moment, but they weren't able to actually convert, and it hurt them in the end. And it's that first period they just never really were able to come back from.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a theme where one period kind of sets the tone for the rest of the game, or the one period just kind of sinks them. Giving all the credit in the world to Samuel Montembeau, he actually played very, very well, and he's been kind of a bit of a hidden gem for Montreal this year. He's essentially stolen the starting job from Jake Allen, despite Allen dealing with injuries. But he's got tough shoes to fill. Being the next goaltender from Carey Price, that's a hard spot to fill. But Samuel Montembeau, he's actually played rather well for Montreal so far. He's got pretty decent numbers. I want to say he's got above a 900 save percentage on a pretty pitiful Montreal team. But yeah, Joe, you're right where it was the first period that just really did sink them. Unfortunately, it was a former friend of ours, Jonathan Drouin, getting the second goal in the game, his second goal this year. Funnily enough, after sitting the whole game at Amalie Arena just last week, gets on the score sheet against his old teammate Andre Vasilevsky.
It is kind of funny seeing guys this deep into the season not having that many goals, and also in this game you got to see Pat Maroon score his third on the season, kind of in the same vein. It still holds true though that trade to get Sergachev for Drouin was, the Lightning got the better of that one, even though Drouin got a big goal for them in this game.
Yeah, and it is kind of funny. Pat Maroon does have more goals than Jonathan Drouin this year, but Drouin, he's still a really fantastic player. I still really like him. I remember when the trade went down for Sergachev, I was devastated. But as each day goes on, the trade looks better and better and better. And I get, I'm not going to make this the Jonathan Drouin coverage, but he's had a little bit of a rough patch. He's had some adversity thrown his way. He's had injury issues. He's had personal issues. He's had many, many things just getting his way from having a smooth career. So hopefully he can start to turn things around. Maybe a change of scenery might be good for him. But regardless, I'm happy for him to have got a goal in his former building. But at the same time, that did push the game over the edge.
Yeah, well, okay. I don't know. I guess I'm just not a big Drouin fan. I don't wish ill on anybody, but I'm not a big fan of his. Something interesting we did see in this game, though, is obviously the head coach is Martin St. Louis, who is just an amazing hockey mind. And if you noticed on the power plays that the Lightning had, Montreal cheated to Kucherov so hard that he was basically in the corner with a guy directly on him. And that was the entire game plan for Montreal's penalty kill, was just put somebody on Kucherov and don't give him any space and don't allow him to be passed to.
Yeah, it seems like in the last couple of years, it went from Victor Hedman being the quarterback on the power play. Typically, that's what your number one defenseman is, but it's kind of transitioned to Kucherov. He's the guy that's dishing it out. He's the guy that's looking to make the first or second pass to get it to a one-timer, whereas in years past, it might have been getting fed to Kucherov. So, yeah, honestly, a pretty good way to stifle the Lightning's power play is to just tag on him and just surround him and suffocate him. But of course, with a high IQ mind like Nikita Kucherov, it doesn't always work that way. He ended up getting the puck to Braden Point. Actually, no, it was Steven Stamkos. Pardon me.
Yeah, he was isolated from the play, and they ended up working on the as you're looking at the opposing goaltender, the left side of the ice, and Stamkos fed it to Point. And it's at that point it's like a 4-on-3 when you have that much ice to work with. It really helps. One thing that the Lightning have been said to do, especially with the number one power play, is just kind of play perimeter, while the penalty kill have started to learn that if you just box up nice and tight, they can't make these passes that are across the middle of the ice for the one-timers, and it really hurts the ability of the Lightning to use their passing. But by isolating Kucherov they were a lot more dynamic, moving a lot more, and the way that the puck was flowing ended up working in their favor in a sense. I liked seeing something different out there on the power play, at least.
Are you implying that we should maybe take the puck away from Kucherov a little bit more and maybe cycle it through some more guys on the power play
I am
instead of
100% suggesting that every team that is in the NHL should take one of their penalty killers and go have a tea party in the corner away from what's going on the ice, and that'll be about as effective as you could possibly imagine with somebody that's on the power play.
I'm all for that, man. As long as we get some better results, man. The power play seems to be kind of dipping off in recent weeks as well. So whatever it takes to get some change, that might help greatly. So I don't know, Joe. Is there anything else in this game that you really want to cover? I'm trying to erase this from the annals of my mind.
Well, I mean, I'm not really looking forward to talking about the next one, but let's like a Band-Aid, just go ahead and rip it off.
Let's rip it off. It was a really tough loss in Montreal, only making it tougher going to Ottawa, losing 7-2. This game got out of hand really quick. It was competitive for most of the game, I'll say. I still think the Lightning underperformed for the vast majority of it, but it was still within an arm's length to take this game, to take at least 1 point from it. And a power play goal seemed to be the crippling blow that just let the game get out of hand for the Lightning. To me, it was the Derek Brassard power play goal, the one that really just sucked all the wind out of their sails, just took everything out of them. That was kind of the final crushing blow, in my opinion, after, again, kind of a little bit of a lackluster game. They're tired. They don't want to be playing in Canada in March. I can't really blame them, but it wasn't anybody's best performance of the year by any stretch, especially, and I don't mean to pick on him, but I didn't think Brian Elliott really played up to our standards. I thought it was one of his worst games this year. I'm not going to say his worst, but it definitely wasn't up to par.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Brian Elliott could have been sharper. This was a game that I actually had one of my men's league hockey games going on the same time, but I love you guys so much that I went ahead and put myself, knowing the final of being 7-2, put myself through the agony of watching all 60 minutes of it just to be able to break it down a bit. I know.
Do you need to talk to somebody, Joe? Are you upset with yourself? Like that's cruel and unusual punishment, self-inflicted.
I mean, I'll do it again for you guys. It's but the crazy thing about this game, it was 7-2, but until there was that stretch of like 2 minutes. I'm trying to see on the score sheet, 2 minutes late in the third, where it just became absolutely brutal. Yeah, see, it was 3 goals that were scored by the Senators in the course of a minute and a half that they did late in the third. Before that, it was 2-4. It wasn't completely out of reach for the Lightning to get back, and they controlled a lot of play for part of this game. They had some, I'd say, like probably about 10 minutes in the first period there, and then just completely blown out late in the third. But it wasn't all horrible. I mean, this is a theme that I've been hearing, or an idea that I've been hearing passed around, is that the Lightning are starting to look tired later in games. And, we can touch on this more later in this show, but it kind of seemed that way for me as well, where the Lightning were pressing at certain points, and then they came up against kind of a goaltender that was playing really hot. And then by the end of the game, they just didn't have anything left in the tank really to overcome the adversity, and then the score got completely out of control.
Yeah, and this kind of unsimilar to past weeks where it's one period that really sinks them, the one period where they just get everything goes wrong for the Lightning. It was kind of the antithesis of that this week. I'd say the first period was pretty bad. They got off to a two-goal lead. Ottawa, that is. Alex DeBrincat with 2 goals did not help me in fantasy. He was my opponent. But the second period, I thought they actually played really well. They outshot their opponent. They outchanced their opponent. They controlled, I'd say, the majority of possession throughout the entire second period. And then still being down in the third, John Cooper, daring as ever, he pulls Brian Elliott with, I want to say, about 5 or 6 minutes to go. And it was an immediate face-off loss. Puck gets down the zone, and Brady Tkachuk pots it into the empty net. And that would not be the final goal of the game. Brian Elliott goes back into the net, and Austin Watson scores his 8th goal of the year on Brian Elliott. So it was just one good period versus 2 bad periods, where the last couple of weeks it was 2 good periods and 1 bad period. So at least there's variety.
Yeah, that's true. And another thing that was even commented by the head coach of Ottawa, which is DJ Smith, was that in other games the Senators don't usually capitalize on opportunities such as a turnover, and in this game it seemed like every chance that they were handed, the puck went in the net for them. And he said it was kind of a really good puck luck for them rather than it being straight up just an effort and structure thing that got them the win in this manner. And again, you can maybe call me a Lightning apologist. When they're absolutely horrible and off their game, I will call it out 100%. But it seems like they've had significant struggles with just puck luck. And you can say you make your own luck, but at the same rate, it seems like when things go bad, they go horrible for them. And the other team's scoring goals where the Lightning aren't getting the same breaks. The puck's not going in the net when there's a bad turnover, or there's a big save that's made where Vasi and of course in this case Brian Elliott has had a little bit of holes that are getting exposed.
Yeah, it's kind of a when it rains it pours type of deal. Just when bad things keep getting worse, this game was the epitome of it, if you will. Just everything went out of control after 1 goal. Really, everything just went downhill from there. So it seems like the Lightning over recent weeks, really since the trade deadline, where they really started skidding, is the teams that are the fringe playoff teams, the ones that are still in the hunt, have really, really showed out against the Lightning, like Ottawa, like Buffalo, like Florida, like everybody else. It was even before the trade deadline. It was the All-Star break.
Yeah, we mentioned it, I think, just after the All-Star break, that the Lightning have the second most difficult schedule in the entire NHL. So we knew they were going to be up to some pretty solid adversity here with it. It's been some of the worst, not necessarily play. I honestly don't think it's been the worst play I've ever seen out of the Lightning for the stretch, but it has been some of the worst losing streaks that we've seen for the last 6-7 years, I'd say.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is attributed to puck luck. PDO is kind of a dead stat nowadays with advanced stats, but I'd say the Lightning have had probably a pretty poor PDO, essentially just fancy numbers for luck. A lot of it is just they're not getting the bounces. They're unlucky with whatever it might be in the play, but I can't give them that excuse for every single bad game. They have not played up to par, up to standards. But the thing is, we were having these same conversations last year. At least me and Jake were. I forget when you came on with us, Joe, but it was this. But I'm sure you know this. Last year was the same thing where they just kind of skid into the playoffs, and everybody starts to worry at their own rates. Everybody starts to worry. I'm kind of, my hand is over the panic button, but I'm not ready to hit it quite yet. And again, like, the only thing that this team does is prove me wrong. So I'm waiting for them to prove me wrong. But at the same time, I also am still very concerned.
Well, I got a buddy that is, big into those sort of numbers. I'm gonna try finding his tweet as we're talking here. But he did bring up that exact thing, and maybe I'll have it in time to be done with the next game of coverage. But yeah, they go into the later part of the season. They've always been a playoff team where they're, the regular season is, just like a practice for the playoffs, it's felt. And it is a frustrating thing to watch. But, I mean, they went to the Stanley Cup the last 3 years in a row. So maybe they know what they're doing a little bit better than us.
Exactly. I know way better than to doubt any of these players. I know way better than to disagree with anything Cooper does or to criticize any of these players. I really need to bite my tongue sometimes when I do that because, again, this team does nothing better than prove me wrong, and I just pray that they keep doing it. They're really good at that.
And, I mean, we should jump into the Boston game because I really do think things changed quite a bit, going into this one.
Very much so. So oddly enough, after two really rough losses to non-playoff teams, their closest game of the week so far comes against the best team in the league this year, arguably one of the best regular season teams of all time. They're still on pace to shatter the Lightning's 62-win season. Maybe not shatter, but at least break it. We'll see if that happens. I'm betting no, but still, our closest game of the week still comes as a loss. It was a 2-1 loss to Boston, and this game, it was definitely a fun game. It was entertaining, and it was definitely a good preview of what playoff hockey, what it's like. I know it's been so long since we've experienced it, less than a year. But this game got not out of hand, but it was feisty really quick. Right off the opening draw, we had a pretty good scrum. Pat Maroon and Garnet Hathaway were talking before the puck dropped. Ross Colton was involved with somebody, or two Bruins. And it was Maroon and Hathaway. 8 seconds into the game, dropped the gloves, and Pat Maroon, actually, despite him being a little bit of a hugger this year, probably one of his better fights, I'd say. I think he really wailed on Hathaway. And Hathaway, he could chuck him too. He's one of the better fighters, I'd say, kind of an underrated fighter. Pat Maroon, I'd say, definitely got the better of him. So that was a great, really fun way to start the game. I was definitely excited and hyped about it. Joe, your thoughts?
I definitely would agree. It did result in the end in the Lightning getting into a bit of penalty trouble, but at the same rate, they did a really good job killing off the majority of those penalties. At a certain point, you're just going to get burned by the number one team in the league. That's, if you haven't heard, enough superlatives for the Boston Bruins this year, they're just straight up amazing. And that pains me to say. Anyone that knows me, that's a tough pill to swallow, but they really are. And the Lightning still ate up those penalties pretty well. I mean, I know that there is one or maybe two of the Bruins power plays that were cut short by them taking their own penalties, but the penalty kill for the Lightning, it was 1 in 7 for the power play for the Bruins. Killing off that much against that good of a team is great. And
that's a win right there.
And the Lightning came out with heart, like you said. There's a lot of heart in that first shift and in the first period in general. I guess Pat Maroon's mouth got him in a little bit of trouble there to take an extra penalty. I think it was his, if I'm not mistaken, penalty that he went to the box for the Bergeron goal. Yeah,
so he had for whatever reason, he got the extra 2 minutes off the face-off fight for whatever reason. I don't know. I don't think they even announced the call in the building. I don't think it was an instigator penalty. For whatever reason, he got the extra 2 minutes there. I'm not going to use that as a crutch or an excuse, but yeah, he did chirp something from the bench. I don't know if it was directed to the refs or not, but he ended up getting another 2 minutes after that. That was the third.
Yeah, the unsportsmanlike conduct is what it was labeled as at 5:33, and that was the goal that was the penalty that Bergeron ended up scoring on, and that at that point was their third power play in a row, only 5 minutes into the game.
Does it say what the first penalty was for Maroon?
So Maroon got, he only had 7 minutes total. So he got 5 for fighting, and then he got the additional 2 that was the unsportsmanlike. Ross Colton got a roughing.
Oh, okay.
And then another roughing. Yeah, so he got 2 roughing calls against Jacob Lauko. Yeah. I appreciate you not letting me dangle there like we do to Jake every now and then.
It's funny to see him suffer.
So there was that double minor there, but the one against Pat Maroon was the one that they ended up scoring on. All right, but they came out with passion, right? They came out heated, knowing they're playing the top team in the league, and 3 power plays in a row for the Bruins. The Lightning had 5 power plays as well, of which one was only, I want to say, like 40 seconds or so, because it was one of those or maybe there were 2 that were really short. But if they would have done well on those power plays, it could have been a different game. Another stat that, this one means a lot to me. face-off percentages. Bruins 66% on the face-off, and giving them that much possession. When the Lightning played them earlier in the season, the Lightning did really, really well, and the majority of the reason that they did so well is that Bergeron didn't. I think Bergeron was like 23% on the face-off draws, and this
Sorelli killed Bergeron
Killed him.
in that third game.
well, Bergeron must have taken notes because he went 73%, and Sorelli was 27%. So every time, figure 3 out of 4 times that they're going head-to-head, possessions going to the Bruins, and that definitely makes a big difference with puck possession. But it was really a game that, man, the Lightning came out and really battled well. And I'm not going to say in a 7-game series the Lightning are winning with the effort that they put on the ice, but it gives you some hope that the team does have the capability of doing it.
Yeah, one thing that I've noticed over the past couple of years is that they play down to their opponent. They, for whatever reason, whoever lower tier team that they're playing, they'll play at their level. It's very seldom a blowout, absolute domination. Ask Eric what domination is. I don't know, but I'm going to live with that forever. But they always seem to play down to whoever their opponent is, but simultaneously they punch up whoever their opponent is, like Boston or just really good teams. Of course, it doesn't always work that way, but they rise to the occasion. They punch up, and whoever might be the better team on paper or in the standings, I still think the Lightning's the best team in the league. They have the track record to prove it over a big blanket era. But right now, it's the Boston Bruins. They're the best team in the league, and they competed as good as anybody else really could against that team. It's them punching up. It's them being able to drag themselves into a fight that they might not deserve to be that close in. Of course, I'm emphasizing a little bit. I'd put this team up against the 1980 Montreal Canadiens, era adjusted. But I think it is kind of a product of the Lightning, where they play down to their lesser opponents and they play up to the better opponents. It's just a pattern that I've noticed over years now.
And definitely agree. In this game, you saw them play some of their best hockey. And we talked a couple of weeks ago. I think it was maybe it was right for that New Jersey basically series that we had, that even if they lose the game, if they lose doing the right things, it's okay, because it's progress in the proper direction when you're getting ready for the playoffs. And there's not a doubt at all in my mind that they lost this game the right way, albeit, getting that many penalties kind of hurts. I think the Lightning are up there for one of the most penalized teams in the league.
They always are.
I mean, they didn't used to be, but they have been recently, and that you have to have a really strong penalty kill when that happens. I just, I think that's something that maybe needs to be solved a little bit still, and that ended up being really the difference in this game. And actually, the first goal, the Patrice Bergeron goal, that wasn't a clean goal. Didn't that hit off of Hedman's skate?
Yeah, it was some kind of deflection, some kind of greasy goal that did find its way in. The power play goal, doesn't matter. It still crossed the line. But, yeah, it was a bit of a greasy goal for sure.
So I mean, the Lightning were in this one and doing it the right way. Like I said, clean up some of the penalties there. But I was not expecting the Lightning to come out after losing 7-2 with the type of heart that it takes to play against the Bruins this tight and at Boston.
I like what you said a couple minutes ago of they lost this game the right way, or however you put it. That's a really good way to put it. But one of the biggest things that I did notice in this game that we haven't seen a lot from over the last couple of weeks, really, and I think this is a bit of them saving themselves for the playoffs, but their physicality, and they brought it this game, especially during their early penalty kills, and maybe when it even out for just the 30 seconds in that first period that was even strength. They finished every single check. They were not letting anybody get by. They killed those penalties really, really well. Even the one that ended up going in, I thought they killed those penalties pretty well. And yeah, their physicality, they weren't letting anybody have an easy time having any sort of possession out there. Even their forecheck, they were really heavy. Forecheck on the penalty kill. They really were aggressive. They were relentless.
Yeah, so to add to that, as a comparison, I have the stats pulled up for the Canadiens game. The Lightning have 16 hits in that game, and against the Bruins, I had 35. So you're right on, not only with your observation, but the stats to prove it.
And one thing that kind of correlates a lot as well too, I don't think so much in this game, but usually the team that has more hits is the team that has less possession because if you're hitting somebody, you're going after somebody with the puck. So I don't think that was a product of this game. I think they were, well, of course, they didn't have the majority of the possession. They were on the power play for 58 minutes of the game, or on the penalty kill, pardon me. So of course they're going to be checking, but it was a fairly even game, I'd say. So it was just upping the physicality, turning it up to 11. And I still think that there's a couple more notches that they could go. And I think the lack of physicality is just them saving themselves from the playoffs because they play better when they're physical, not their shithousery, but like where they're, Corey Perry and Pat Maroon chirping people and trying to drag people into the fight, but actually, physically dragging them into the fight, getting the opposing players angry, not with your words, but with your actions. Actions speak louder than words. And the actions that they took, like finishing their checks and maybe a couple slashes here and there, a couple ankle whacks. It does a lot. It really does. This team plays way better when they bring out the big guns, when they play physical. I still really do love the addition of Tanner Jeannot, and I think he's going to unlock a new level in the playoffs. I really hope he does for sure, but come playoffs, we all know that this team is different. So I'm going to save myself a little bit because we are going to elaborate on this a little bit later in the show. Joe, I'm sorry. I'm rambling here.
Oh, no, I mean, you're all good. There was one thing to note that I heard from Dave Mishkin, who just, he gets to look at the games a lot more time and knowledge than most of us. And it was that I didn't realize Pasternak had 599 points and 49 goals on the season going into this game. And the Lightning were all over him, making sure that a milestone wasn't going to be set with them on the ice. And they really did play with a lot of heart. You could see them start to tire out though towards the end of the game. Later in the third period, which kind of again brings up how tired is the team that we're looking at with the Lightning. Overall though, it's hard to say that with 3 consecutive losses on the week, you end the week with a loss against the Bruins. But I look at it as like a real uptick in the way that they're playing and something very hopeful, which, again, I might be looking at this a little bit optimistic, but the way that they did it the right way.
It's better than looking at it in the doom and gloom sense. I'm sure John Cooper is happy with their team's performance. Unfortunately, just couldn't get it done. If we could talk about something good, Vasilevsky, he played really well. He actually played really, really well. We'll touch on that a little bit later. But also the shorthanded goal differential is starting to look a little bit better. It's still in the red, but it's getting closer to yellow. Victor Hedman, he scored a shorthanded goal. A great goal, actually. His first shorthanded goal of his career. So at least that's something that looks pretty good. I still can't get over the shorthanded goals, but at least in terms of...
I can't believe that was Hedman's first shorthanded goal, which I know he's a defensive defenseman, but when you see a stat like that with a guy that's been playing as long as he has, every time it's like a milestone of a first, like, oh, I didn't quite realize. And he got that first goal deflected off his foot, and he came back and answered it with his own, was this 3 minutes later, in order to tie the game back up, and it was a good look.
Yeah, and it was honestly a really good shot as well. It was a perfectly placed shot, something we haven't really seen him do rather recently. He likes to take the big slap shots from the point, and even those haven't really been there. But this was a little bit more of it was a clap bomb, if you will. So it was a really good quality goal, I'd say. But you know what else is really good quality? That's the merch. at RBLR Sports. Shop.rblrsports.com. We've got some of the best Tampa Bay sports merch in the game right now. Jake is going to be super stoked on this transition. I really hope so. But we've got everything you need in Tampa Bay sports. We've got Rowdy's gear. We've got Lightning gear. You're going to need that come playoff time. Bucks gear. You're going to want that come September. And of course, MLB, it's starting up soon as well. We're in spring training time, so get you some Rays merch as well. Use the promo code BOLTS for 10% off everything in the store. You can get all your spring gear at shop.rblrsports.com.
Nailed it.
I know. I did my, like, way back when, before you were here, I did like one great transition, and then Jake took it and sprinted with it, and I never did one since until now.
He'd be proud. I think he'd be proud with that one.
All right. So, Joe, you were really excited. Maybe not really excited. I was a little bit more excited to maybe talk down on him, but we're going to transition into our 3 stars of the week. Starting off with our 3rd star of the week being Darren Radish. I'm going to let you take the lead on this one, Joe, because you're a little bit more excited about this one than I. But I'm willing to hear you out.
Okay, and we can debate who's been the best player of the week this week, but when you really are looking at a team that has been struggling, it's kind of hard to say who's been the best player. Instead, if you look at it at an individual performance, I thought Radish, especially for the Boston game, really was doing very, very well considering the games that we've seen him before. So it was really almost like a most improved in order to get him that the 3rd star, and mine in Jake's opinion. If you remember a few weeks ago, Radish got the corner turned on him in a big boy play where he just got manhandled, and he was 13 minutes of ice time in this game and didn't get scored on against the Bruins, which is a big deal. But he also was generating offense quite a few times, down low in the offensive zone, and feeling a little bit more comfortable with his game, and it really showed it. He was skating with more confidence, playing more confidently. And while you could definitely argue that there were other players that had other games, or in other games, that played better, I think the marked improvement that we've seen out of Radish for this was enough to garner him a 3rd star for the week.
So, you did kind of talk me into it. There was one thing I was going to bring up was improvement. So, I do like the fact that maybe he was not the best player or the 3rd best player from the team this week, but we have noticed some pretty good improvement in a pretty short span from him. So, I have had some issues with his defensive play. He doesn't really, he's had some pretty rough breakouts that have led to goals getting past Vasilevsky or Elliott, but again, with his limited role playing, under 15 minutes a night, and sometimes under 10 minutes a night as well, I think we're seeing noticeable improvement, and which is something you don't really see from guys in his age group, if you will. He's 27 years old. You kind of peak there. You're not really developing any skills better, and he might not be developing his skills better. He might just be getting rid of the yips, maybe, because he's having a hell of a year down in Syracuse. So I guess all we're looking for from him is improvement, and we're seeing that. But Joe, before we move on to the 2nd star, before you get your next point out, I want to ask you, if you had your choice, would you start Darren Radish or Zach Bogosian?
Well, there has to be more parameters for this question. What
game 1 of the playoffs? Game 1 of the playoffs.
It's Bogo, let's go, baby, without a doubt.
Okay.
But at the same rate, Bogosian gets hurt. So does Chernak. And we've seen Sergachev and Hedman all have games missing this year. So with that in mind, and Perbix as well. I mean, there's been a lot of games missed by players on the defensive end. And when you have someone like Radish who is tearing it up in the A, it gives him the chance to start to get used to the difference in speed and really the difference in gameplay in general that you get when you're in the big. And Radish has to make somewhat of an adjustment. So for the next, how many games left do we have? Maybe 10?
8.
8, great. So for the next 8 games, I'd like to see him in probably 5 of them in order to make sure that if we do need him in the playoffs, he's ready to go. But game one, yeah, it's going to be Bogosian.
Okay, I like your thought process there. Again, keep cycling him in, keep acclimating him to the big leagues. So I really do like that. But with our second star this week, none other than a guy we all know and love. That's Andrei Vasilevsky. He played phenomenally in that Boston game. He was honestly, despite the whole team playing very well throughout the entire game, a couple shortcomings here and there, Vasilevsky, he was probably the best player on the team throughout the entire 60 minutes. He kept them in that game a little bit longer than they should have been. So he was truly hands down fantastic in that Boston game. Wasn't too bad in that Montreal game, but let's not talk about that. But again, that Boston game is enough to get him the second star on our list this week.
Yeah, and we've been accustomed to seeing Vasilevsky basically take hold of a game and not give it up to the other team. This past whole season almost, we haven't seen but flashes of that. He still has it though, and this was a game that he really kept the Lightning in it. When you have 7 penalties that you have to kill off in the course of a game, your goaltender is always going to be your number one penalty killer, and a lot of that comes to the responsibility being on Vasi's shoulders. He did a really good job with it, and in the one that they did score on him again, it was a shot towards the front of the net that hit off of Victor Hedman's skate in order to deflect it in. So it's hard to even point fingers at Vasi when it's something crazy, like a crazy bounce like that. So he played really well, and fingers crossed that he's starting to get into his playoff form.
Well, just like everybody else on this team, he flips the switch come playoff time. He's a playoff goalie. He's honestly, despite him still objectively being the best goalie on the planet, he's not much of a regular season goalie. At least he's, like the entire team, he's adapted his game to kind of be good enough through the regular season and turn it on in the playoffs. We all know the Big Cat can flip the switch like everybody else on this team. He might be the guy that owns the switch and tells everybody else to flip it. So hats off to Vasilevsky. He much deserves this second star this week. Moving on to our first star this week. Who else but Victor Hedman? Surprisingly, he's been on this list not as many times as I would have believed, not as many times as I would have liked this year, but it's nice to see him getting some recognition even later in the year as well. He's had a really good week this week. Despite some ugly losses, I'd say he was one of the better players in that Boston game as well. I'd put him up there right with Vasilevsky's performance with that shorthanded goal, but not even just that. He's actually played really well defensively in a year where his defensive play has been less than desirable. This week, I thought he's actually played very, very well, and with a shorthanded goal to boot.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They lost 7-2, and in that game, Hedman was a -1. So it shows you that he did play very well against a team that got beat up, lit up, and got scored on quite often. And then in the Boston game, it was just such an unlucky deflection to hit him in the skate like it did, and go in. And if you take that one away, then maybe the Lightning pull closer, I guess, to a victory. I don't know. You can guarantee it. But he did score that shorthanded goal. It was the only goal of the game. It was his first shorthanded goal, and man, was it nice and gave such a bump to the Lightning. He had a really strong week in a week that everybody seemed to struggle.
Yeah, and again, huge personal thank you to Victor Hedman as well for, again, shortening or getting that shorthanded goal differential, just getting it a little bit closer to 0. But again, great week by Victor Hedman. I just hate that. So,
yeah.
Moving on.
The shorties have been rough, but I mean the Lightning have had a few now.
Again, the differential is getting a little bit better. We're getting into the yellow. I don't think we're going to be at 0 by the time playoffs start, but we're just like Darren Radish. We're seeing improvement. All right, the playoff race is here. We are looking down the barrel right now. We know who we're playing. We know where we're playing. We know we're playing the Toronto Maple Leafs, and it's all but decided that they're going to have home ice advantage. it's grind time right now. With 8 games remaining, we've got a lot to, maybe not to prove, but a lot to improve on, refine our game a little bit. A lot of it, actually, pardon me. But again, with the Boston game, we've seen some good flashes. We know the team is capable. Like we've been saying essentially all show, they turn it on come playoff time. But ideally, what improvements would you like to see in these next 8 games heading into the playoffs and then carry into the playoffs? What's just a couple things you think that maybe we could improve on?
This schedule has been so rough, and I got the schedule pulled up right in front of me, and the columns are just every single Sunday, every single Tuesday, every single Thursday, and single Saturday. They're playing hockey. That's a lot of hockey to play. Getting back-to-backs for 1, 2, 3 consecutive weeks. That just wears you down. So what I want to see moving forward is a little bit tougher and less. I'm less able to express it in just sheer words as it is feelings. I want to feel that they can be rested. I want them to feel like they're not. I think some of the lapses they've been having, the mental lapses, they've been making a ton of mistakes, and it might just be from being overplayed, if you will, with this schedule that they've been handed. And I mean, we've all been there. You work a real long shift at work, and then next thing you know, you end up getting stuck for another hour or two. How productive are you for that hour or two? Could you have gotten that work done in 30 minutes if it was in the beginning of the day when you've got more energy and you're a little bit more with it? I kind of feel like that's what's happening with the Lightning for quite a few of these games, is where they're just not sharp at times, or they're just kind of lacking the energy to close them out. So I don't know that I can put my finger on a way to verbalize what I want to see over these next 8 games. I want to see, obviously, fewer mistakes, fewer turnovers, close out games, and play stronger defensively. But how do you do that? I mean, saying that is easy, but when you've had such a tough schedule, how do these guys take it from, getting 7-2 loss in Ottawa to maybe a 2-1 game against Boston, and that's what they do from here on out? I'd be fine with them losing half the remaining games if that's the way they're going to do it.
So I guess maybe you'd want to see better schedule makers, maybe. Nah. So this is actually going the week that we had just covered. It's their first week in 4 weeks that they didn't have a back-to-back, and it's the first week in 4 weeks that they only played 3 games instead of 4. Of course, you'd have to play that back-to-back. So hopefully, with consistency and not shoving so many games into such a small block, that could maybe free them up a little bit. Because one thing that the Lightning definitely proved wrong over the last calendar year is the rest versus rust argument. I mean, we all saw it after the Panthers series in round 2. They swept them. It was kind of a cakewalk, if you will. Meanwhile, New York, they played Carolina in a bit of a grueling 7-game series, and I bet the farm on game 1. I said, "Oh, the Lightning are taking that, man. They've been kicked their feet up. They've been doing nothing. They're rested, healing up." And that was one of the ugliest games in the playoffs. That game made me pull my hair out, and then followed by another loss. And then they start getting their feet again. They start, getting the wheels moving a little bit. So, but
it's
of course,
funny. I always have that debate with my wife. She's, saying the Lightning are horrible if they get too much rest. You don't want to sweep a team and then sit for too long because they're always, bad. And I take the opposite view. I'm like, no, they need the rest. They've been through the grinder for so long and then, where's that guys kind of hate saying my wife is right. They always they always play poorly when they get too much rest in it, and it's amazing how it does affect the team.
And just look at, after the All-Star break, not just this year, but not even last year. It's like the last 5 years or last 10 years, I want to say, whatever the stat was, where were below NHL 500 in games after the All-Star break. I wonder what the week after the All-Star break looks like going back a certain amount of years, but the rust, they oxidize very quickly.
I like the way you put that, but that actually was the stat that I was trying to bring up or find that my buddy put up, and I wasn't able to locate it, but it was basically saying that after the All-Star break for the last few years, how horrible they've been, and they're actually like pretty much right on pace for what they've done historically. I think that this one feels a little bit different, in my opinion. In other years, when they're losing games, they seem more disinterested. Where in this one, it seems like they're trying. I think the effort level has been there, but they weren't able to finish, or they get maybe tired at the end of the game. It just kind of looks different. So I am hopeful that they can, still have the pedigree entering the playoffs. But it is. This has been a schedule, man. It's been a schedule.
Sure has. So I don't know. And another thing that does kind of maybe not concern me, but of course they can save their physicality. We were talking about that earlier. I think they're just saving it for the playoffs. We all know that they can play better when they're playing physical. But the offense hasn't really been there. The power play is tailing off a little bit. And the Boston game, the penalty kill looked great, but I was just about to say that doesn't score you goals, but Victor Hedman did score a penalty PK goal. So, but most of the time it doesn't. So
that's funny.
they really haven't showed out in many of these games. I want to say the last game that they put up 5, it had to have been 2 to 3 weeks ago. The last 4 games have been 3 goals or less.
It was the Montreal game at home on the 18th that they put up 5, and before that, they did one on the 7th against the Flyers. But most of their games are, let's see, 0, 4, 3, 3, 4, 4. So, I mean, they have had a couple, but 2, 2, 2, 1. They're not putting up the offensive numbers like we're used to seeing.
Yeah, I mean, at least in this last week, they've been held to 2, 2, and 1. So it's a little bit eyebrow raising, but not, sound the alarm, go crazy type of deal. But it is something that makes me go, So hopefully.
We know these guys have another gear, though, too. So,
yeah.
Hopefully we'll get to see that coming up soon.
Yeah, and hopefully they cover Kucherov hard on the power play, and everything will go to plan like yours, right?
Yep.
All right. So, looking at the upcoming schedule, it doesn't get much easier. No, it doesn't get much easier.
It does not.
It's honestly a little bit of a reverse week of the one that we just had. Playing in Carolina at PNC Arena. What is that? We didn't put the dates here. That's tomorrow. It's Tuesday. Playing in Carolina at 7 o'clock. Thursday, we're playing Washington at home at Amalie Arena. And then New York Islanders, they come in on Saturday, I believe, at Amalie Arena as well. So 2 fringe teams, which we know the Lightning haven't really played.
That can be dangerous.
It can be very dangerous. That's kind of been their Achilles heel this year, is those fringe playoff teams. They've got a lot to prove. They've got nothing to lose. And, of course, objectively, their toughest opponent this week is going to be the game tomorrow, which is the Carolina Hurricanes game, which they have played us pretty well over the last year or so.
Yeah, they played us in March, and in that game, if you remember, they won 6-0. That was the shutout that I was mentioning a little bit ago, and they're just playing some really outstanding hockey. Everything gets a little bit tighter at this time of year. You don't usually see streaks of 7, 8 wins in a row for teams anymore when it comes to late into March. And right now they're first in the Metro with 103 points, and they've locked their playoff position up. They're still a dangerous team. Their last 10, though, were 5-4-1. So they are a team that definitely can be beat and haven't been playing but just barely over 500 hockey. They're, I said it for the last one, this is a big test for the Lightning to kind of see where they match up, especially because it comes on the heels of the loss to Boston when they played really well. Carolina, I feel like, is a much faster team than Boston is, and they're, tough to contain. It's going to be a real test for them to see how they play Carolina under these circumstances.
I'm excited to see because it could be it's a very important game to me because it could either be a 5-game losing streak if we lose, or it could be, slaying the dragon, if you will. Of course, Boston might be the dragon of the regular season, but it'd be a good way to maybe come back after a rough 6-0 shutout from a couple weeks ago. It would be nice to see. But again, this not that it will make or break the team, but it'll be a good good measuring stick for the team. So another fun, interesting game should be the Islanders game. They are they're kind of meandering. They're fighting for their playoff lives, but
they're in the first wild card right now with 83 points. Pittsburgh's got 82 points in the second wild card. And then with this few games to go, there's still a chance that either Florida or Buffalo can catch them. Washington, who we do play as well, is 7 points behind with only 8 games. Yeah, 8 games for both those teams. So they're kind of living on hope and a prayer here. But the Islanders are a team that they're 6-3-1 in the last 10, so they're playing pretty decent hockey.
Yeah, and you never underrate Andrei Vasilevsky. You never underrate Ilya Sorokin. He can steal you a game. He could even steal a series in the playoffs. So it's a game you shouldn't take lightly. You need to crunch all these points you can get. Again, home ice advantage is still not out of the realm of possibilities. It's a little shaky, but it's still entirely possible. So ideally, we go 8-0 over the next 8 games heading into the playoffs. But of course, we can all dream. And then, of course, the Washington game, I guess we did skip that a little bit. They sold off at the trade deadline. I would hope, I'm expecting a win there. I would really like to see a win there, but Washington, they seem to play us really well.
They do 3-5-10 in the last 10. 3-5-2 in the last 10. They are kind of tapering down, it feels, but like an injured animal in the wild. Sometimes you never know what sort of reaction you're going to get at them when they come in, and the Lightning have not played well against teams that you could consider them playing down to. But that is a game as well that I think they should, really focus in on doing things right and keeping the score really low. And, just, again, hammer home, playing a solid game where you mitigate mistakes that you have, you reinforce good habits, and look, we got 8 games, guys. Get it together. Let's go.
The stat might be outdated. I saw it last year, but do you know the team that Alex Ovechkin has scored the most goals against, at least circa 2022?
Was it the Bolts?
It's the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Doesn't surprise me. Surprise me.
Got to watch out for him and Tom Wilson. He's starting to heat up too. You got to keep your head up around him. Good thing Jake is not here. He would be livid in this conversation. I know he just hates the Capitals. So, Joe, do you have any final thoughts about this episode? Anything you want to get off your chest? Any closers here for us?
Jakey Poo, we miss you. Hope you're having a good vacation.
We didn't burn the place down, Jake.
That we know of yet. We still have to close it out.
We still got 2.5 minutes to go here.
Yeah.
All
no,
right.
that'll do it for me.
All right, guys. Again, so don't forget to follow us on all our social media platforms. Rate us, leave us a review on the audio platforms, and come see our beautiful faces on YouTube. Like, subscribe, do anything you can to help out all of our podcasts here. You really, really do.
We appreciate
help
it, guys.
us out. The fans that keep us running, keep us going. Don't forget to check out the RBLR store, RBLRshop.com, for all your Tampa Bay inspired merch. Again, don't forget to use code BOLTS for 10% off. For Matt, for Joe, signing off. Thank you for listening to our. We'll see you next week.
Go Bolts.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.